Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of YouTube podcast. Today we have a special guest. It's Rich Johnson, the founder of Sport3 group. And he has a lot to say about YouTube, a lot of very interesting opinions. And there's going to be a very lively chat. I am sure 100% about that. Hello, Rich, and welcome on board.
Hey, Paula. Good to see you. Yep, thanks very much.
Good to see you. So a bit of story. So I got to know you because somebody sent me your LinkedIn post saying, hey, this guy has something interesting to say. And that was about thumbnails. I was actually in an airport. I was in Madrid coming back from Sports Pro 1 year ago or 2 years ago. I don't remember, but a couple of people sent me your LinkedIn post. I was like, actually, I kind of agree with this guy. I want to talk to this guy. And that's how we got to know each other. And since then, I actually saw that you really get the full understanding of YouTube and sports. And I think there are some very interesting points that you can make on this podcast. So welcome to these episodes.
Yeah, no, I think we share a lot of the passion, but also opinions. I think for the space.
Yes.
So yeah.
Indeed. So very much about you super shortly. So you are founder of Sports3 Group. You have experience from Social Chain, from Man United. So definitely sports and digital are at your core. Do you want to just give a bit of a background, and then we get into the real topic, and that's going to be the interesting part.
Yeah, sure. I mean, super briefly. So 14 years or so now in sports marketing. So content, partnerships, brand storytelling. And yes, like mentioned, Manchester United, very much on the partnerships team there, looking after Nike and Chevrolet, New Balance, football, and when they entered the space, Social Chain, which was at the time a startup social agency. A lot of people know it now, based on Steve Bartlett and him founded the company, and INEOS. And again, before most people knew who INEOS were, when they were INEOS Grenadiers, old Team Sky cycling team. And yes, now founded Sports3 Group. So we're building content agencies for the sports space. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Cool. And so let's dig into your opinions from your posts, because I think that there's always very nice conversation, and even the whole conversation under your post, like all the comments and the debate. You're very good in that to create the debate through sports in the sports industry. But one thing specifically, I think it's very interesting is you really dig down into data and analysis, and you have strong opinions on anything related to the Premier League. Not only, but a lot about the Premier League. So what are the three key things that you noticed over time that are underlooked or overlooked, or there's something that could be done better or is done very well? Like, what did you see in these last few months that are worth a mention?
Yeah, I think for me, you touched on it then, but there's a broader theme around YouTube, which is around detail and needing to have a close eye on detail when it comes to creating content for the platform. This kind of point relates more broadly to the sports industry generally, but I think a lot of the space we still operate by acting as publishers and just uploading content rather than crafting content necessarily specific for the platform and for YouTube. And there's a big difference. And to be clear, also, I don't think there's a passion issue there. I think it more comes down to a resource issue and directional top down, and it being a priority. So sort of the Premier League and the clubs involved are always a interesting place to start, just because of the effective attention and reach, and sometimes resource, of the clubs to a degree. I think one of the things that you're sort of referring to when we speak about, again, my thoughts and opinions on the space is definitely when it comes to, again, this point of attention to detail, which is thumbnails. So I sort of, this is again, just because I'm a bit of a, yeah, I don't know, call it what you want, bit of a YouTube nerd or geek or anything. A lot of people are.
Well, we all are. I mean, you are and I am, and I'm proud of that, 100%. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And I think it stems from, listen, lots of people have lots of things to say on creators or people like Mr. Beast and that sort of stuff. But there's one thing you can't argue, which is they're like obsessive about their craft. And, you know, many, many years ago when you you see certain creators like just nailing it and getting great traction on the platform, it's usually through great content, but really paying attention to the small details. And, you know, one of those is around thumbnails. So I sort of did this analysis because I had a hypothesis that, like, I don't think that this is really truly optimized within sports rights holders in the sports industry. So I looked at all the 20 clubs in the Premier League. I was like, and to be fair, I did this about this was about a year ago, and it's probably due a refresh in terms of the analysis. I think some have started to dabble a little bit more. But it was like, do any of them actually change their thumbnails? And the answer was no. Like, literally no one was amending or changing thumbnails. And this isn't just like me sat there going, I think, you know, this should be something that people do. When I was at INEOS, we went very deliberate and gung-ho with a YouTube content strategy. Again, similar to most rights holders, very limited in resource, very high demands to execute cross-platform. But we really paid attention to the small things in terms of creating content specifically for the platform, down to editing style, pace, how we execute storytelling, but then also thumbnails. And there's one like brilliant example where this was during the Tour de France. We were producing sort of quick turn reactive content, basically like vlog style storytelling turned around in a couple of days. It's very intense. It's not easy to do, but we committed to doing it because we'd found success in it. And obviously biggest race of the year, we produced our first vlog, and, you know, we crafted what we thought was a great thumbnail and uploaded it. And we were just sort of going after 12 hours, like, what's happened? Why isn't this taken off? Like, you know, is it the content? The content seems okay. Blah, blah. And so we tried a few different things, but one of the big things that made a huge difference, and it was noticeable. You know, the great thing about YouTube is the data you can get and the detail of the data. We changed the thumbnail. Geraint Thomas, who still rides for INEOS, but, you know, was the lead rider for the Tour. He'd had an accident, and you know, we had this great shot of him where he was, you know, on the sort of massage table being like bandaged up. And we changed our thumbnail from, again, a sort of what we thought at the time was good, like this kind of more generic, like riding shot, and we'd had some nice, just really some 1-2 words on it, and we changed it to this image of Geraint Thomas where he was really, again, looked a bit despondent. It wasn't like we weren't trying to do clickbait or anything like that. It was just a key part of the story that we'd missed, basically, in terms of communicating it within the thumbnail. And we changed it, and literally, like, the video actually started to take off, and, you know, became like a top 10 video. It makes a massive difference. And it would have been easy for us to be like, oh, well, we'll just go on to the next one. But it was like, no, we've really sweated over this video. We think it's good. There's just something that we need to kind of tweak and change. And that's what made me so passionate, and also see the huge gains that you can actually get through crafting good thumbnails. My view is, if it can get you an extra 10 or 20% views, why wouldn't you actually go into spending more time to make them better, even after you've posted it? So
it could even go higher than that.
Yeah, even higher. Yeah, of course.
But the bare minimum is 10%. So like, it's really worth it if you're looking into big numbers, and if you're looking at the latest video, but as well on the full range of archive. because then it also, like, it's both ways. Like anything that is the latest video, brilliant. You need to just keep updating and keep trying A/B testing as there's no tomorrow. And then as a sport club or like race or right holder, then you have thousands and thousands of videos that, like, that's a playground basically, and you can just grow with very simple things.
Exactly that. So yeah, I mean, you know, you guys, obviously the tools that you guys have to obviously optimize the archive as far as thumbnails go is and obviously other key elements across YouTube is fantastic. And again, I just think there's more opportunity to plug into it. What generally happens across the sports space is Premier League, yes, but also many other areas of the sports space, templates are made and then templates are stuck to. And again, I think you should template to a degree, but don't let it, it shouldn't just be the be all and end all. It's okay to have a bit of experimentation. And I don't think it means doing the classic, you know, YouTube, like shock face, you know, because that
it doesn't need to go that far. I agree.
Oh yeah. And again, like we were doing really great stuff at INEOS when we were focusing on this, and we weren't falling into those traps, but we were able to increase okay, marginal gains was one of the original things from you know, the boss at the cycling team at the time, Dave Brailsford, but we were able to really kind of create compounding effects and impacts just through focusing on the small details and things. So I was just surprised that it's not as much of a priority as it should be, just because you're making the content anyway. Literally, why wouldn't you want to increase performance by, like you say, 10%, 20%, double in many circumstances, again, that I've experienced.
Yeah, I mean, the hard part is done, the content. The content is the really hardest part to create and edit and distribute. And then when you have it, you need to leverage it as much as you can.
Yeah. But again, I don't think this is down to firstly, I don't think it's down to a lack of passion from people who are working on, whose responsibility it is for the channels, or desire. I think it's mainly down to resource, and it should be coming from top down, in my view, just because of the importance that YouTube has and will continue to have over the next decade for sports content. You know, it is such a high priority platform that you have to be looking at these optimizations. I mean, again, my old you know, old boss at Social Chain, Steve Bartlett, they've nailed this, you know, for creating obviously one of the biggest podcasts now in the world, but I think it's well documented the approach that they take to thumbnails, where they even go so far as to do paid spend on Facebook to test which future thumbnails are gonna work, and getting the most click-through rate is really smart, and it's really simple. But that does mean that they get optimal performance. Now, listen, I don't necessarily subscribe to all the ways in which their thumbnails are produced, because I think some of them are quite lean into negativity or clickbaity style headlines. And again, I don't think that should be the style of sports rights holders, but it's possible with some extra effort and energy to increase improvement and gains. So yeah, definitely. I think we'll see hopefully more effort and energy put into this in the future, and as YouTube becomes more of a priority. But that's definitely one thing that yes, Premier League clubs, but many others across the sports space should be looking at, because ultimately someone clicking on your video is the currency, right?
Yeah, and then it's the number and the data. So you read the data, and that's going to tell you, is this working or not?
Exactly.
And I think that people are looking less at those data than they should, because that's going to tell you the story. So I think a lot of the times I see, from a content perspective, it's really about the content, which is, the content is king. So that's a must-have. But then you need to understand how that performs, and that's going to tell you the story of how the audience perceives that, and that's the other half of the story, and that's very important. And as you said, the YouTube Analytics has millions of data, and it's a matter of just really putting those data to work for you in your advantage. You have it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the most interesting things that I found as well, and this was really kind of like from the data, it almost feels obvious, but again, it's, if you look at I'm using the example case study of the world of cycling content. When most pictures that we get of when you're in a cycling team, and this applies to some other sports, where most pictures and imagery that you get, from race or on bike, they've got helmets and glasses on. You don't see, there's not much expression. And, it was looking at the data, we saw actually a lot of the thumbnails that aren't performing as well, that it's using imagery where we can't see much of the riders' faces. It feels obvious, but it's not until you go into the data and have a look, and then you can kind of find those little insights. And then it was like, to my point around the Geraint Thomas one earlier, it's like, okay, can we find something with a bit more expression, something that can tell a bit more, unlock a little bit more about the story and what, or the emotion behind the video, and what we might find and experience. Like I say, that seems like an obvious thing to pull out from data, but still, if you look at a lot of other cycling content, it's helmet and glasses. It feels unavoidable, but you kind of actually have to get around it, because otherwise you're not able to express possible emotion that you're going to experience with the actual content. So little things like that, again, if you don't spend the time doing it, then you'll never actually unlock it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then moving forward, what's the number 2 kind of learning you got from the Premier League?
Yeah, I think there's definitely like a formats point. I don't see necessarily like a ton of exploration necessarily of different formats. And so what I mean by that is I think there's definitely an element of like mimicry amongst teams. So again, this was another like nerdy, very specific like piece of analysis I did, but again, I was sort of like, I'm sure there is a element here that behind the scenes can be done better or done differently across many teams and clubs. Most clubs will do some sort of like training behind the scenes at training sort of series, which performs pretty well. The content, it's often quite lo-fi and like relaxed and just like, it could be 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, sometimes longer, of training and building up to a game. And what I mean about mimicry here and potential lack of innovation in formats is that I think there was about, when I did the calculation, about 8 out of the 20 teams, they all called their series like Inside. It was like Inside Arsenal, Inside United, Inside Tottenham. It's just kind of like, yeah, okay, they're not necessarily competing for views with core fans, but they arguably are competing for story with international fans and new fan bases. And I think to do that effectively, like there is a few different ways in which you do that. Obviously, clearly game footage is always going to be one of the main pieces of performance. So that's kind of a given, and you're not in control of that. But then the things which you are in control of are those types of behind the scenes storytelling formats. Again, things like could be challenge based videos or that sort of stuff. I just think there is a lot of there's quite a lot of repetition and sometimes not too much distinction from team to team. And I'd love to see a little bit more experimentation, a little bit more playing with more YouTube native formats from time to time. I've seen some nice examples of this recently. I think Arsenal have lent into it quite well. I saw one of their recent sort of series and videos was almost the kind of traitor style formats that we've seen a lot through Sidemen and Beta Squad and other channels, which is like guess the ex-Arsenal footballer or guess the Arsenal fan, and that stuff's done really well, and I think they've been a good example of doing it well. But I definitely think there's much more scope for more original formats and less mimicry across the teams.
I saw as well that, if I'm not wrong, they were playing a bit with ASMR, like kind of an initial trial, which made me happy. It's like, I think that's the next big thing. Easy to produce and with big opportunity and totally emotional. But I haven't seen it like super developed, but at least I saw something from Arsenal coming that way, and I was like, that's good to see.
I think you're right. I know you've spoken about this before. I think definitely like that is something that I can't believe people haven't lent into even more. Again, I think I shared with you actually at INEOS, we actually did something. We actually did a branded piece of content that was like based on a popular cycling channel called Bike Builds, and but we showed one of our bikes being painted.
Oh yeah. You shared the very
yeah, it was
the,
really
the
like
bike example.
yeah, and people, it was just they loved it, and yeah, I agree. I think there's this like sights and sounds definitely has this role on YouTube, and some clubs have done it really nicely across some of the platforms, particularly in vertical formats. But I'd love to see that a longer style iteration make it to YouTube. And outside of that, also, this has been like a concept that I've had kind of stewing for a while, but there's a huge obviously music community on YouTube, and live sets or immersive sets or that sort of stuff. And I think there's obviously this really natural balance with playful balance of that with sports. And like, again, I can't believe there's not some sort of like no club or rights holder at the moment doing some sort of like live streamed set, either like for even on the bus or for the changing room or something like that. Just again, like taking a YouTube native format and then going, how can it work for the sports space? I think there is just so much of that to unlock. The other one, I think, and again, I'm going to say we sort of did this pretty well at INEOS, but is more real time storytelling. So again, we were we sort of almost by design, but also by forced because of resource. We used to do a lot of really good like vlog storytelling. That was, we actually didn't have the budget for a full-time videographer, and there was also just a delicate sensitivity that with some races we kind of couldn't get past with having an embedded videographer in team. So we sort of lent on this GoPro and phone first approach that meant that riders were much more comfortable with having it in their hands or them actually talking to the phone or the GoPro, and obviously having it on their bike or that sort of stuff as part of training or into other more intimate spaces that they weren't as comfortable with when we actually when we were able to put in a proper videographer. And what this meant was we ended up with these really like intimate vlogs where we actually heard a lot from the riders, and that was their build up before a race, in training, and after the race, and just again different areas of intimacy that we had other competitor teams doing similar things, but with much more formal video setups, and they were more resourced, they were spending more money, but ours always outperformed. And I think that's because, again, we took this YouTube first, again, a little bit by luck, but a little bit by design, particularly when it came to the edit, where it was more of this sort of vlog first YouTube native storytelling approach that just cut through what everyone else was doing. And again, I think that's a missing piece for many rights holders and clubs and teams. I've seen Barcelona experimenting with something similar recently, but it's more kind of hosted, but they've been doing some nice stuff. But yeah, that's another one where, like, rather than just showing what happened, can you create more of a story through something like, again, a vlog style storytelling? And rather than wait until the end
more rough and authentic, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And rather than wait till the end of the season, which many do, to produce some sort of like big documentary, do it week by week. You
can do both. I mean, you can have the whole kind of life story along the way, and then you have a big documentary.
Yeah.
It could be something not super highly produced and something super highly produced. It's just two different pieces of content.
You're absolutely right. It is different. It's different. And you asked for a third point, which I think is more around, again, this is more of an optimization and editing point. So this was actually something I was looking at just recently from the Mr. Beast and Sports collaboration content that he did. And I was like, he's a master. He's effectively doing a sports challenge video that is such a staple of content, sports content on YouTube from rights holders and within partner activations. So he's effectively doing that. How's he done this? And one of the most telling things, aside from like all these unbelievable names that he that he brought into the video.
Yeah, the big names. Yeah, it's just number one.
Yeah, exactly. So take that aside. Well, what did he do? Well, he took 20 seconds to get into the first challenge. And it was another 20 seconds then until the ball was thrown. And by that point, 40 seconds until the first ball was thrown, which was the Tom Brady challenge. And by that point, you're like 40 seconds into the video and boom, I feel like I'm part of it now and I want to see the rest. He has crafted that to a T. Again, say what you like about Mr. Beast, but he's brilliant at that. Now, the Mr. Beast,
well, he mastered as well. Like Mr. Beast has mastered the analytics. Like he's obsessed with the data, and there's a reason why he's doing that way. Like, and there's a reason why he's doing thumbnails, and everything he does is really based on the data that he's reading. So everything is led from there. To be fair,
yeah, exactly. It's well documented. You know, you can find videos and articles online where he's and there's even his PDFs that were leaked that literally, you know, explain it out. But if you, and to be clear, not everything should be Mr. Beastified, like, you know, that fast pace shouldn't be used for, more emotional or when you're trying to tell different stories. Like I think, but sports challenge-based videos are a perfect example where we should be learning from it. So I went and had a look at some other examples, just a random selection of last month, different rights holders and effective comparative challenge style videos. And everything just took a lot longer. There was a lot of fluff. There was a lot of introduction that I just don't think needs to be in there. And again, this is where it's like, let's get into it. You know, that
go straight to the point. Yeah, show me the beef and let's go. Yes,
exactly. Most of them were like above a minute. One of the intros to one of the challenges took 2 minutes 40 seconds, and honestly, by that point, like you've lost a huge amount of audience, and that's not because attention spans are dwindling, because I don't subscribe to that thesis. I think it's just because everyone's got options, and honestly, if something's taking too long and if it's effectively not good optimized content, then I'm going to go somewhere else. So that's the kind of final point there. We've spent a lot of time talking over that, but I think some important opinions, at least, or learnings, hopefully.
Right. And who's doing something very cool and that do you think it should be like followed in a way from the right holders?
If it's rights holders, I really like UFC's channel. Again, listen, they have become, I think they've got 19 million subs, so they're you know, effectively, I think the third or fourth biggest when it comes to sports. WWE, which I do class them as sports, some people don't, based on its scripted nature, but they are the huge outlier with 108 million subs.
They're number one on what they're doing. Like the sport or not, it doesn't matter. Like they're number one on what they're doing.
And you know, they're blessed with huge amounts of content. But I think WWE are really gold standard. UFC are a real gold standard when it comes to, again, professional and competitive sports. They have a really nice system that they use around fight nights of build up. They also introduce, they do have a really great, very vlog style storytelling series, which gives you amazing insights on the fighters, sort of breaks them out, gives you great access, but it doesn't feel overproduced. It feels really intimate, which is a key point. They do a lot of thumbnail testing as well on that series specifically, which obviously I really like.
I would doubt about if you were saying something opposite. Basically, luckily they're doing right.
Yeah, exactly. They also do some thumbnail testing with the when they post immediate post-fight interviews, which I really like. Again, they'll try some different things there, which is cool. They fill their schedule really nice with a really sophisticated pre-fight night schedule, which is your live content. Again, this storytelling build-up stuff, the press conferences. It all looks really great, and again, nothing super like crazy innovative, but it's really smart and it's really well done. And again, with the right optimizations. And then in between fights, again, they go into the archive. They use really great archive. I even saw they use live a lot, and they're not afraid to upload big long montages, which again has become
That's key. That's
an
a standard. Yes.
more and more people, more and more rights holders should be doing this. They're currently not many currently are. There's a few dabbling. Again, you've spoken about this before, which I've seen. Which NBA have produced some really long montages. Premier League have started to do some. UFC do this a lot, and I saw one packaged up the other day, which I thought was really great. I think it was actually on Thanksgiving. It was just like, I loved the title. It was something like, here's a video that you need to watch if you want to understand or get into UFC. It was like show people around the Thanksgiving dinner table or something, and it was just really cool. There was a bit of humor to it, just even in the title, and there was this real like, oh, don't just watch this if you like UFC. It was like this, reason for someone who wasn't so familiar with it to sort of watch it or to show someone else. So again, they use the archive really well with these long montages. They're my gold standard. I think they're superb. And probably resource very well too, but they do it well.
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter. Like resources are a thing, yes, but that's not the only thing. As you said as well in some examples, sometimes is the lack of resources. Just use your juice of creativity, and that doesn't mean that you need to be with lack of resources, but sometimes being authentic doesn't mean to have overly produced content, and then it helps, especially if we're talking YouTube style or platform styles content.
Yeah, and listen,
it's easy to overly produce. It's very easy if you're coming from a traditional media point of view. It's super easy, and that's actually counterproductive.
Yeah, I think they understand their audience as well, because every rights holder has this challenge. Like, how do we produce plenty of content? How do we make it, YouTube native? And how do we not, again, decimate the brand with falling into, oh, well, everyone says I need to be following this creator or this creator, and that's not the, again, take inspiration. I've spoken about it a lot. Like, take inspiration, look at what's happening, but then make it right for you and your audience. And they do that really well. I think, again, the best I've seen.
Yeah, you don't need to be anybody else. You need to be yourself as a brand, but you need to be authentic in the right way for the platform, so that people just perceive the authenticity.
Exactly. And there's a really good distinction then that they are creating content rather than just acting like a publisher. It's a really, really clear distinction.
Now, we spoke about the Mr. Beast and the collaborations, and I see a lot of athletes coming into YouTube right now. What's your view there? Like, who's doing something cool? What's going on with athletes, creators?
Yeah, I think, again, talked about a lot. I think Ronaldo was like the catalyst for the discussion. I think we'd spoken about it before, and again, but Ronaldo was the catalyst for the discussion, closely followed by Jude Bellingham. Okay, he's launching some stuff on YouTube. I mean, there's a few points here. I am very bullish on the fact that YouTube is one of the platforms that some, not all, but athletes need to understand correctly and invest in, because again, it's not just, it's building an audience. It's building a more engaged audience than other socials. I think, what tends to happen with athletes is, whether on Instagram or whatever, they curate a lot of content, i.e. they get pictures of themselves and post after a certain race or win or before a certain event. And again, that's engaged with and liked by a certain element of the sporting world. Are they building fan bases? I'm honestly not convinced that they always are. I think, again, the influence of certain athletes, I think, can definitely be questioned. Just because they have huge following numbers, it doesn't mean that they firstly know how to build a really good fan base or can necessarily directly effectively engage with that fan base. So I think YouTube kind of cuts through that. You can't hide.
Yeah, it's not a picture. So
yeah, exactly. It's not a picture. You can't hide on the platform, and I think it's the most vulnerable platform out of all of them, because it's difficult, and I think it's difficult for a few reasons to create good content for the reasons that we've discussed. I think that's again why many creators should be celebrated, because it's not easy to do and they're mastering a craft. And consistency is key. You need to commit to this, and I think that's what many are scared of, and also why many have tried in the past and dipped off. So what we're seeing at the moment, I think, is just the start of many more athletes coming onto YouTube, but I think it's very different to other platforms, where again they can probably get exposed pretty quickly. I don't enjoy necessarily saying this, but I think Ronaldo is an example where launched to a lot of fanfare. At the time, again, I said and I think it's great, but I think the proof will be in the pudding in terms of execution. And yeah, they aren't necessarily executing to the expectations of a YouTube football audience, and I think that's being demonstrated, which is a shame. And I think they need to put a bit of work into that. But contrast that with someone.
To be fair, on the Ronaldo case, I think that one thing that I give them credit is that they're trying out many different things. And usually when you're coming from that, with that huge expectation, usually you have a playbook, like a brand playbook, that you cannot play anything, like even at the border of the playbook. It's like, this is it. That's the brand. The fact that they are actually trying out many different things, I mean, for me, they get a huge respect, because usually it's very hard if you're a brand in general. If you're a brand like Ronaldo, which is number one, so by default you need to be number one, then it's not that easy. And the fact that they are trying out many different things and they are trying to be very authentic, and some stuffs are not going to go, sometimes are going to be bad, they're not going to work out, but they're going to test out and read the data on what is working. And I think that's as an approach is, I think, is due a lot of respect, because it's very hard if you're coming from that kind of background. And I don't see that in many other cases. So I think that they're taking a big risk there. And by doing a lot of tests, there's going to be a reward. Something is just not going to work out, and they are fine with that. And I think that's not as obvious as it could seem.
Yeah, I agree on the point of that they've been brave and they didn't have to do this, and that it's interesting to see them trying some different things. I definitely agree with that. I think there is an element of bravery with it. Where I perhaps sort of think there's much more room for growth is, like, I honestly think contrary to that, I think they should maybe pick one thing and try and do it as best they can. I don't know. I really like Ronaldo. I'm not a Ronaldo fanboy. I'm not one of the people in the comments, that he gets hundreds of thousands of every day. But I think they need to develop a reason why people would go to the Ronaldo YouTube channel that isn't all about Ronaldo. A lot of the content is basically effective Ronaldo propaganda to a degree. Seriously, but
so you're gonna go into politics? That's what they're saying. Like the next, what job is free?
Again, it's like, they've made little animations on how he's the top goal scorer ever, and he's on the race to 1,000 goals, or and it's like, it's great, but it's not. It doesn't kind of stir you with much feeling, or that I'm learning much about him. Again, the best performing stuff has been the stuff with his family, and that kind of feels like the territory that people definitely want to see more of. And listen, it's difficult. He's obviously the most followed person in the world on Instagram, and obviously one of the most famous people in the world. So, but I think, again, when you make this decision, there's probably more you can do than some of these crazy montages. And it's very even people have picked up on it, particularly on like football Twitter and stuff, that it's almost like a 10 years ago type approach to the platform. But listen, hopefully they get there. I think one example where, to the contrary, in terms of, again, let's talk about, I don't particularly enjoy saying that it's been done badly, so I'd rather talk about who's doing it well. And like Bryson DeChambeau, obviously, is a shining star. And he actually didn't start like all guns blazing on it. I remember, because I've been a huge fan of his for 5 years or so now, just not because of content, because of golf. I like his approach to everything. I'm not surprised he sees his success, because he's taken the meticulous approach that he takes to improvement on golf, and I think he probably applies that to YouTube. But when he started, his content wasn't banging. He was just creating, he was falling into some of the tropes of, well, I'm going to sort of create content that I think a golfer should create. But now, for the past 2 years, he's really focused on, again, he's got a really nice format, Break 50, which he rolls out with, again, other golfers, ex-golfers, celebrities, other creators. He's not been afraid to shy away from that. And it's really great, because you're invested in the content, because they're on this journey and you want to be part of it. It's a great example of where developing like one really good format is something that people are going to come back for. I like what Noah Lyles is doing on YouTube. Again, he's telling his journey. He's doing live content as well. He's not afraid to go live, which I think is super cool. So I think he's another great example. It's the one thing that is clear, though, is there is so much room on YouTube for many different athletes, and you don't even need to be I've mentioned some of the biggest athletes in their space, but fundamentally, like, you don't need to be the biggest athlete, one of the biggest athletes on the planet to try and.
Actually, it's the other way around. That's more growth, room for growth for athletes that are known or less known, let's put it this way, than the other way around. Definitely.
Yeah.
So we just have 1 minute left. So I just want to know more about your recently launched sports content personality of the year. So let us know so people can participate. What is it and how does it work?
Yeah, basically, so this is a take on sports personality year, but I really thought there was a role to celebrate which athletes are doing content really well. So I did a post about it a few weeks ago on LinkedIn, and you can find it. I'm asking for people's suggestions, I'll be making a countdown of basically the athletes. The prerequisite is that athletes have to create good content, not just be curators of content. So again, maybe the list will be quite small, but I will be.
You might be surprised. You never know.
Right. No, there's been some really good suggestions that I wasn't aware of. So it's really cool. It's been really good exercise.
We're going to put the link under this video so people can actually comment there. So and get to the LinkedIn post, so you get more input.
Yeah, and the shortlist and winner will be defined a little bit from data and quite a bit from personal opinion and/or other people's opinions who've commented on the post. So
cool. When will we know? When is it due to be known? The personality.
So I will start publishing it from the 16th of December.
All right, perfect. Let's hurry up and add some more names there. All right, look, Rich, thank you very much. It was a real pleasure to talk to you today. I highly recommend everybody to follow Rich. He's not just knowledgeable, but he has a very good sense of humor, and is a great professional to be surrounded by. So thank you very much for being here to the Business of YouTube podcast.
Thanks, Paolo.
Thank you, Rich. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.